For over 25 centuries, the raw, untamed surface of the European continent, its freezing alpine passes, its malarial swamplands, its volcanic wastelands, and its violent flood-ravaged valleys, served as an impenetrable fortress that ruthlessly destroyed every civilization daring to challenge it. Carthaginians marched legions into the frozen teeth of the Alps and watched entire divisions vanish into the ice. Greek colonies hugged the coastline like terrified animals, never pushing deeper into the hostile interior. Celtic tribes spent millennia building and rebuilding wooden settlements that the rivers swallowed whole every spring. Across 1,000 generations, the geography screamed one deafening message. You do not conquer this land, you survive it, or you die. Logic dictates that no rational civilization should have attempted what came next. The projected cost, not just in gold, but in human bodies, in shattered bones, in generations of enslaved labor, was so monumentally catastrophic that it should have paralyzed any sane leadership into submission. You do not carve a road network across an entire continent. You do not bend rivers and hijack mountain springs to feed a city of 1 million souls. You do not raise an unreinforced concrete dome so impossibly massive that no human civilization would match it for nearly 2,000 years. The rational mind recoils, the mathematics scream retreat, but driven by an insatiable, almost pathological hunger for total dominion. Over trade, over territory, over the very geography of the known world, the Roman Republic and then the Roman Empire made a decision of supreme, breathtaking arrogance. They looked at an entire continent of hostile wilderness and declared it an enemy to be defeated. They mobilized hundreds of thousands of soldiers, slaves, and engineers. They invented construction materials that modern science still cannot fully replicate. And they launched the single largest coordinated engineering assault on the natural world that humanity had ever attempted. This is the story of how the Roman Empire declared total war on the geography of 3 continents, poured the equivalent of entire national treasuries into the earth, and built an interconnected web of roads, aqueducts, sewers, and monumental structures, so devastatingly ambitious that it reshaped the physical surface of the planet. Discovering across the centuries that even the most brilliant engineering is merely a temporary truce with the forces of nature. To understand the sheer insanity of what Rome attempted, you must first feel the environment they were fighting. Before the legions arrived with their surveying tools and volcanic concrete, the Italian peninsula was a geological nightmare. The Apennine Mountains ran down the spine of the land like a jagged, impassable wall, splitting the territory in half. The lowlands were no better. Vast stretches of the Roman Campagna were a stinking, waterlogged hellscape of malarial swamps where mosquitoes killed more humans than any invading army ever could. The Tiber River, the lifeblood and curse of Rome, flooded violently and unpredictably, vomiting sewage through the streets of the growing city. And beneath everything, the volcanic geology rumbled with seismic fury, ready to shake apart anything permanent that human hands dared to erect. This was not a hospitable cradle of civilization. This was an active, hostile organism rejecting every attempt at permanent settlement. Why then did Rome attempt to conquer it? Because they had no choice. Control geography or be destroyed by it. Rome was a land empire surrounded by hostile neighbors, dependent on the rapid movement of legions across vast, roadless distances. Without roads, their armies could not deploy. Without clean water, their capital of over 1 million inhabitants, the largest city the Western world would see for 1,000 years, would drown in its own filth. Without sewers, the ground beneath them would become a breeding pit for plague. Survival demanded the most aggressive engineering campaign ever conceived, the systematic annihilation of every geographic barrier between Rome and total continental dominance. The weapon they forged to fight this war was unlike anything the ancient world had witnessed. Their supreme innovation was opus caementitium, Roman concrete, a diabolically ingenious mixture of volcanic ash from the Bay of Naples, quicklime and seawater that underwent a chemical reaction so profound that modern scientists have only recently begun to understand it. Unlike modern Portland cement, which degrades the moment it contacts salt water, Roman concrete was engineered to feed on its environment. When seawater infiltrated cracks, it reacted with the volcanic ash to grow rare interlocking crystals of aluminous tobermarite and philipsite, microscopic mineral armor that sealed the fractures. and made the structure stronger over time. Their concrete did not decay in the ocean. It healed itself. It became harder, denser, more resilient with every passing century. A weapon designed not simply to resist nature, but to weaponize nature's own chemistry against itself. The scale of what they built remains, even by modern standards, almost incomprehensible. The Roman road network, at the height of the empire around 150 AD, stretched across an estimated 250,000 miles. Enough paved stone and compacted gravel to circle the equator 10 times over. Over 50,000 of those miles were fully stone-paved military highways, constructed with a meticulous four-layer system. The statumen, the rudus, the nucleus, and the summum dorsum, reaching depths of 5 feet and so brutally over-engineered that sections still carry traffic 2 millennia later. It was not a road system, it was a circulatory system, the veins and arteries of a continental organism, pumping soldiers, grain, gold, and information, from the rain-soaked hills of Britain to the blistering deserts of Mesopotamia. Then consider the aqueducts. By the 3rd century AD, 11 colossal aqueduct systems fed Rome alone, their combined conduit length stretching nearly 500 miles, through mountains, across valleys, and deep underground. These gravity-powered masterworks carried approximately 1 million cubic meters of fresh water into the capital every single day, enough to fill 400 Olympic swimming pools before sunrise. Engineers maintained gradients as shallow as a 2-centimeter drop per 100 meters, using hand instruments called grommet and chorobates to achieve accuracy that would challenge modern laser surveying. The Pont du Gard, a triple-tiered aqueduct bridge in southern France, rises 160 feet above the Gardon River. Constructed from 50,000 tons of limestone blocks cut so precisely that no mortar was needed, held together by nothing but their own weight and the obsessive precision of Roman engineering. And then there was the Pantheon, a structure so audacious that it broke the laws of what was considered physically possible. Completed around 126 AD under Emperor Hadrian, the Pantheon's dome spans 142 feet in diameter and rises to the exact same height, forming a perfect sphere within its interior walls. It remains to this day the largest unreinforced concrete dome ever constructed in the history of human civilization. No steel, no rebar, no modern tensile reinforcement of any kind. Roman engineers achieved this impossibility by grading the concrete itself, using heavy travertine at the base and progressively lighter volcanic pumice toward the apex, while carving 140 recessed coffers into the interior surface to strip away unnecessary mass. At the very crown, a 30-foot wide open oculus punches through to the sky, simultaneously reducing the structural load at the dome's most vulnerable point and flooding the interior with a single, rotating column of natural light. Nearly 2,000 years later, modern structural engineers still study this building with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Beneath the streets, an equally monumental but far less glamorous war was being waged. The Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer, was originally constructed around the 6th century BC, making it one of the oldest pieces of functioning infrastructure on the planet. Initially an open drainage channel designed to drain the malarial swamps of the Roman Forum, it was progressively enclosed and expanded over centuries into a massive vaulted stone tunnel, large enough to drive a horse-drawn cart through its main passages. This subterranean monster drained the accumulated filth of 1 million human beings into the Tiber River, preventing the catastrophic plague epidemics that would have annihilated the city. The initial phases of construction were marked by an explosive, intoxicating energy bordering on the delusional. Legions carved roads through solid mountain rock by hand. Engineers diverted entire rivers to lay foundations in dry riverbeds. The Colosseum, requiring 100,000 cubic meters of travertine stone and 300 tons of iron clamps, was erected in less than 10 years. By tens of thousands of workers, including prisoners from the Jewish revolt, under conditions best described as industrialized exploitation. There was a blinding faith that no barrier was permanent, that every mountain could be tunneled, every river bridged, every swamp drained. And for a time the earth appeared to submit. Roads materialized at terrifying speed. Aqueducts spanned impossible valleys. Cities rose from malarial wastelands. It was the absolute zenith of ancient hubris, an entire civilization drunk on its ability to reshape the planet. But the planet was never truly conquered. It was merely suppressed. And across the centuries, nature launched its devastating patient counterattack. Earthquakes, the inevitable consequence of building an empire across some of the most seismically active terrain on Earth. Periodically shattered aqueducts, collapsed bridges, and cracked the foundations of monumental structures. The Great Earthquake of 343 AD severely damaged Rome's aqueduct system, cutting water supply to entire districts. Floods ripped through river valleys, obliterating road surfaces, and washing away bridge supports. The volcanic geology that had gifted them their miraculous concrete also threatened to bury them. Vesuvius had already demonstrated its apocalyptic power in 79 AD, erasing Pompeii and Herculaneum from the face of the earth in a single night of superheated ash and toxic gas. And the human cost was staggering, though largely unrecorded. Ancient sources did not count the dead among the enslaved. Archaeological examination of laborers' skeletons has revealed shattered spines, pulverized joints, and the unmistakable markers of chronic soul-destroying physical abuse. The magnificent infrastructure of Rome was not built on engineering genius alone. It was built on a foundation of anonymous, uncounted human suffering village that history has largely chosen to forget. Jump to the modern era, the civilized world has inherited these structures and largely taken them for granted. Tourists photograph the Colosseum, pose for selfies on the Pont du Gard, and toss coins into the Trevi Fountain, without a single thought for the geological warfare that made these things possible. But the invisible war never ended. It merely shifted from construction to preservation. And the battle is being lost. The Colosseum, which has already lost its entire south wall to a catastrophic earthquake in 1251, now faces a relentless daily assault from traffic vibration, air pollution, and the corrosive acid rain generated by modern Rome's choking traffic. Recent restoration projects, partly funded by private luxury brands, have spent tens of millions of euros simply cleaning the blackened facades village and stabilizing the crumbling arches. The Appian Way, the oldest and most famous of all Roman roads, is slowly being swallowed by vegetation subsidence and the relentless encroachment of modern urban sprawl. Rome's remaining aqueduct arches corrode and weaken under the assault of acidic modern rainfall that their builders never anticipated. The Pont du Gard requires constant environmental management to prevent flooding, fire, and the erosive damage village of 1 million annual visitors walking across stones that were never designed for tourism. The Pantheon's open oculus, which so brilliantly solved the structural problem of the dome's apex, allows rain, pollution, and temperature fluctuations to relentlessly attack the ancient concrete from within. An invisible army of archaeologists, structural engineers, and restoration specialists fights a daily exhausting, enormously expensive battle to prevent these 2,000-year-old monuments from finally surrendering to the forces that have been trying to destroy them since the day they were built. The paradox is devastating to the millions of tourists who visit every year. These structures are postcards, beautiful, permanent, triumphant symbols of human genius frozen in time. But to the engineers who maintain them, they are colossal, aging scars of stone and concrete, held together by an increasingly desperate expenditure of money, technology, and physical labor that the original builders could never have imagined. The gap between the tourist's postcard and the engineer's reality is a chasm as deep and as terrifying as the foundations of the Colosseum itself. Roman engineering was never a permanent victory over the earth. It was the most magnificent, most violent, most costly temporary act of defiance that any civilization has ever waged against the natural order. They carved roads into mountains, hijacked rivers, raised impossible domes, and buried their dead beneath the very foundations they were building. And for 2,000 years, the earth has been patiently, silently, relentlessly working to undo every single thing they accomplished. The volcanic soil shifts, the limestone dissolves, the iron rusts. The concrete, even the miraculous self-healing concrete, slowly yields to the grinding, indifferent force of geological time. Because sometimes, buried beneath the oldest roads on earth, hidden inside the walls of structures that have outlived every empire that followed, there is a quiet, ancient, unending war. A war between humanity's ferocious need to dominate the planet's immutable laws conspiring to reclaim every stolen inch, and the staggering, mostly forgotten cost, in treasure, in labor, in anonymous human lives, that stands, invisible and eternal, in the space between.